Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to pick up where I left off last time, where I was speaking about using Discord as an AI vehicle for analysis and testing. For this video, I want to focus specifically on a particular topic that really is annoying in the context of AI research, and particularly when you're trying to study human behavior. And that is, I want to talk about the specifics of censorship within the AI models. It's frustrating when you have a large amount of real-time information from Twitter, Reddit, or some other kind of social media site, only to come back with the AI model stating that the content violates their terms of service or their policy. When using artificial intelligence the way I am, studying human behavior in such that you can try to model human patterns for buying and selling, we aren't very clear creatures in our language. We don't always speak in prose or poetics or anything nice. A lot of times, especially in trading, when people are desperate or when they're riding on anxieties from having a winning streak, language can be very coarse and very crude. And having an AI model that can study that language without breaking some hidden terms and service condition is critical. It's not so much about being able to maliciously use the AI as much as being able to study human nature in a real and valuable way. And over the course of the last month of trying different models, it has been very frustrating to load 4,000 or 5,000 data points only to have the AI model come back telling me that I broke the terms of service or whatever because some coarse language or something they objected to was inside the data set. When dealing with human behavior, you have to be able to deal with the real world consequences of what that means in the purest and most intimate of ways of just what we are as a human being. Our emotions are a matter of true intent in many ways, and that intent isn't always the best. As you study humanity in general in the AI context, it becomes critical to understand that in order to see where the market is going, whether you want to buy or sell, you need to see what the masses are doing. You need to feed live conversations into your model to build a representation of predictability. The AI world likes to call this role-playing, where you feed in large text of real-world data and then you let the model simulate possible outcomes. And through aggregation, averaging, and analysis, you get a reference point of just what is available in terms of the market and what could happen in the market with the participants. Using AI in this way is not so much about the price or value of an asset. It is strictly concerning and relating the analysis of fear and greed, love and hate, the very rudimentary components that drive us as humans. As much as we'd like to believe that trading is an algorithmic, cold, meticulous approach, that isn't true. Trading is a very emotional approach. People become emotionally attached to a particular asset or a particular time frame, and it affects them emotionally in a way that drives the entire market. Whether it is good or bad doesn't matter. All that matters is understanding that emotional connection between the trader and the asset. AI really is the tool to spend to function on that process. And that is the entirety of what AI really excels at. Human nature is a patternistic approach because it is, for all intents and purposes, reproducible. At the very core of our existence, we are simply primal creatures with primal actions, whether it's fight or flight or any other kind of a primal instinct. Artificial intelligence can model that kind of representation. It can take that information when combined with a large quantity of data and come back with a meaningful representation of what is likely to happen in the market. And that really is a critical point of analysis. So through studying human language and human behavior at its most crudest and rudimentary standpoints, we have a tool that can help us. But when you have censorship in the way, because a particular topic makes somebody feel uncomfortable, it destroys the validity of the research. There is no way you can study human emotion and not study the most depraved parts of what our species is. That is the entirety of the whole point of studying it, to see the best of us and the worst of us as a predictive standpoint, and then to be able to take that and quantize it into a value. For example, we could take the emotion of love and assign it as a positive 10. And we could take the emotion of hatred and assign it as a negative 10. 0 is neutral. And through studying human behavior and patternistic approaches, we can then take and quantize based upon that scale. And that scale can then be applied through a series of algorithms to determine, do we buy or sell an asset? Or if it's a neutral, do we do nothing at all? We have, at the most rudimentary aspect of our psychology, an incredible pattern of resources that are shaped by our culture, by our society, by our own upbringing and our parents. Human emotion is a pattern that AI can study very well. But when you take and censor or limit what can be studied because some people feel uncomfortable, it ruins any meaningful data. And that has been the biggest problem I have been observing over the last month. The censorship levels are to such extremes that even using the word naked in any context can stop a model. And it's disastrous. Hours after hours of research gone because of this insanity. And that really is a true detriment to the entire research field in general. Clinical psychology requires a level of understanding that dives into the deepest and darkest parts of the human psyche. The very parts that usually end up being censored. The parts that drive fear and greed. The parts that spill over into anger and hatred. The parts that deal with our society on a level of domestic violence. When you look at the real trading world or any market in general, and you see the various components interacting, you can clearly see the best and worst of the human species at play. But if you can only analyze half of that emotion, then you're not going to gain a meaningful understanding of that market or of that circumstance. You need to be able to dive into and simulate and study fear. in terms of what happens, not just at the trading floor, not just at the screen, but how it interacts with society as a whole, how it can apply and affect the home. If somebody does something stupid and puts a $25,000 position on an asset that goes hard against them, and they end up losing 50% of value, that has a consequence that can be modeled and studied, providing it's not being censored. As you look into AI and you look into the variables that go into studying human nature, and you decide what aspect of human nature you want to look at, specifically in the context of what you're trying to achieve, you have to look at the possibility that sooner or later you're going to dive into an area that some company finds distasteful or is uncomfortable or speaks of a primal past that nobody wants to admit. That really is one of the biggest aspects that I have ran into in my own research. Being able to find reasonable, realistic, stable models that can handle any aspect of human nature has been extremely difficult. And being able to apply those models on a level that can produce a simulated and expected result has been even more difficult. We could take, through a clinical psychological standpoint, a particular situation and analyze it to what would be considered a reasonable outcome. And through that outcome, we can get an idea of how that can aggregate through a different range of outcomes. That is where AI is one of the best tools available, because it can simulate abstracts. And that is exactly what human emotion is, an abstract layer between us and the rest of the world. Or in many ways, it is us interacting with the rest of the world. So as we progress and as we move through our world and we interact with each other, this layer is always present. And so when we study it analytically, quantitatively, we have to look at the entirety of the full range of emotions that this particular pattern represents. And it could be a good pattern or it could be a bad pattern. For example, when you're looking at a trader looking at a loss of 50% of a $25,000 trade, and you look at police statistics of domestic violence, it's easy to draw a conclusion and a statistical analysis that people losing money could in fact cause domestic issues with their loved ones. So by simulating that process in a contained environment, by running through these simulations with different outcomes based upon what we know, we can gauge how well the system will manage or calculate or predict a possible outcome. And from there, that knowledge helps us make more informed decisions. If we know that emotions drive the trading world, then we can provide education, we can provide tools to help people control their emotions. And by controlling the emotions in the trading world, we have a direct impact on the amount of domestic violence that might come out of somebody acting out of desperation or fear. Trading isn't just a cut and dry topic, but that applies to any kind of a job or any kind of a circumstance. People handle stress differently, and through clinical analysis of that point of view, we can see and make beneficial changes. But it all goes back to having uncensored tools. It goes back to being able to model a real world situation, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how depraved it is, or how unsavory or unpleasant the circumstance is. You need to be able to model and mimic reality as much as possible. And that has been a real huge nightmare. That is one of the biggest things I have been tackling in my own program, Companion. Being able to model human behavior in a realistic and real way. Being able to see how those interactions connect and communicate. And then being able to simulate different possibilities based upon real-world data that I can give the model, such as a Twitter feed, or news from Bloomberg, or Reddit, or some other social media place. The ideology is not just to study the data itself, but to also be able to study a possible outcome as a part of predicting whether or not I should buy more or sell. To be able to tell how the market might move based upon the underlying emotions that drive it. That is really the entirety of what this research is about, and what it needs to stay about is how we can study human nature in a way that is safe, in a way that we can learn from, and in a way that gives us the possibility of building better tools. So hopefully you will follow me along with this interesting little journey, and I will put the link in the description below for the repository for Companion, and demonstrate in future videos more of that code-wise. But right now we need to really understand the theory behind human nature and why uncensored models are very critical. And that is a lot of what you build in your model. You need to think about your own personality, your own subjectiveness, and many things that take into account who and what we are as a species. How do we take an emotion and put a number to it? How can we blend that into a quantitative approach when it is such a vague abstract? All of that comes into play. So hopefully as we continue, a lot of this will make more sense. And from the standpoint of my own career, and working with this kind of stuff for the last 30 years, it's been a fascinating travel and journey, because there are so many different ways that we've already succeeded in being able to quantize and analyze abstract data in a meaningful way. But a lot of that matters not if the data is damaged by unnecessary restrictions. So as we continue forth, share your thoughts. Let me know what you think about this entire process. How do you think AI can be used to continue to model human behavior? Let me know what you think would be a good outcome in terms of what this information might reveal. Because that really is one of the most important parts about this research, is you don't know what the ending is going to be until you start seeing the results. Thank you for watching, and until next time.